PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele, and on this edition of Vegas Hockey Hub Recap, where we break down every single game of the 2024-2025 season for your Vegas Golden Knights, we are going to be discussing the most recent matchup that happened between your Vegas Golden Knights and the Calgary Flames. And this is going to be an intense but exciting episode of Vegas Hockey Hub. Now, before we break down the action, I do want to quickly say, go to www.prconnectionsradio.com, over a dozen shows on the platform. Follow us on social media at Vegas Hockey Hub, and then I'm right down there below at Ian J. Rachiele on all major platforms. And heading into this game, there is no big roster moves. There's no big changes. There's really nothing that I could spotlight for you, but we do have two updates. Nicholas Hague, who suffered an injury recently, he is still out. Kaden Korczak, he is in the lineup in replace of Hague. Now, he is going to be listed as day-to-day. Olofsson, he's listed as week-to-week. And we also have a situation where Cole Schwindt and Brennan Brisson, those guys kind of battling for that last spot on the fourth line. Cole Schwindt would be in for this game, going up against his former team that they put on waivers, and that was the Calgary Flames. So outside of, kind of some minor stuff, there isn't any big news that broke in this game. Now, when we went to morning skate and we watched the practice session and talking to people, networking, trying to, get a feel for the team, you could tell that the energy was up. You could tell that the attitude, the momentum, it was all on a high at City National Arena. And it's so vital for a team in the NHL to have an organization that looks like they're playing as a unit. The chemistry and everything is just gelling and doing really well. And that's what the Vegas Golden Knights did in practice. I mean, this team seemed calm. They seemed relaxed. I mean, if you didn't know any better, this didn't seem like a team that played 3 games in 4 nights. Because remember, you had San Jose on Friday, you had Ottawa on Saturday, and then you had Calgary on Monday. So, I mean, really just interesting situation just to have like Ottawa on Friday for Nevada Day. Then you had San Jose on Saturday and then Calgary today. So for a team that played, back-to-back and then a game immediately afterwards, it's just really interesting to see the dynamic and the tempo that they showed in practice. And that was the main takeaway that we noticed here on Vegas Hockey Hub, was how the team was playing and performing in practice. So the starting lineup for your Vegas Golden Knights, now no big changes like I mentioned, but we'll just go over the lines for you if you do not know. On forward line 1, Ivan Barbashev, Jack Eichel, and Mark Stone. Mark Stone, very impactful game, and we're going to talk actually a lot about what Mark Stone did in this game in general. Line 2, Brett Howden, who's had an amazing start to the year, Tomas Hertl, and Pavel Dorofeyev. This line has done exceptional so far this year after kind of making some changes to the line after a few games. Forward line 3, you have Tanner Pearson, William Karlsson, and Alexander Holtz. This line actually did have a bright spot against Calgary, and we'll cover all of that in this episode. And then on the fourth line, like I mentioned, Cole Schwindt going up against his former team against Calgary, and then Nicholas Waugh in the center, and then Keane Kolazar to his right. Defensive pairings should be no shock here, as you have Noah Hanifin and Alex Pietrangelo, Shea Theodore, Zach Whitecloud, Braden McNabb, and then Kaden Korczak, who's still filling in for the injured Nicholas Hague. Now, is it a bit surprising that they are committed to the McNabb and Theodore not being on the same pairing, teaming up Whitecloud with Theodore, teaming up Korczak and McNabb? I mean, it's a tad bit surprising considering the line chemistry that we did see from Theodore McNabb for so many years. But when you have Whitecloud and Korczak, it wouldn't really fit as well as Korczak and McNabb. And considering that the chemistry they had last year in those 15 games that Korczak and McNabb teamed up together last year when Shea Theodore got hurt. It does make sense from a Bruce Cassidy perspective to have an established veteran like Braden McNabb teamed up with a young, up-and-coming guy, a former prospect with the Golden Knights, in Caden Korczak. Whereas you have Zach Whitecloud and Shea Theodore, two guys who are kind of at this point an established duo. I mean, Shea Theodore's been here for all 8 years the Golden Knights have been around. Zach Whitecloud, former prospect, now he has been with the Golden Knights for the last couple of seasons. And then in net for the Golden Knights, in this matchup, you have Adin Hill. So Ilya Samsonov, he was in that net against San Jose, had a real stellar performance against San Jose. So Adin Hill coming in, against Ottawa, he struggled in the first period, then recovered and actually did relatively well in period 2 and 3 against the Ottawa Senators, was in this net for Calgary, and he looked a lot more confident. He didn't look as stiff as he has in previous games, so it was a nice touch, and something to notice about Adin Hill was that this is a guy who was showing that he actually seemed more relaxed in the net. He wasn't as tense when it comes to blocking shots, and he wasn't really making the wrong type of reading and hockey IQ. So got to give Adin Hill props on that. So getting into this game for your Vegas Golden Knights, and the energy was amazing. I want to say, by the way, to the 4 Calgary Flames fans that were next to me, I'm going to give you praise because I actually had a really good time being at T-Mobile Arena and having the good trash talk, the banter, the back and forth. They were kidding around with me. I was kidding around with them. So, yeah, to the family of 4 that were Calgary Flames fans, they were wearing these retro Calgary Flames jerseys, which was a nice touch, by the way. But overall, I just wanted to quickly mention them, by the way, because I appreciated the back and forth banter. So I wanted to take a second to appreciate that. And also, when it comes to Calgary Flames, I'm going to give credit here. The Calgary Flames had a good fan base that came down for this game. For a Monday night game, there was a decent amount of Calgary Flames fans that were in attendance for this game. I mean, when they do the Canadian national anthem before the American national anthem, there was a decent amount of people singing the Canadian national anthem around T-Mobile Arena. Just want to quickly acknowledge that. So getting into the warm-ups, we were doing a pregame footage for that. And by the way, thank you to Keaton Kolazar for the warm-up puck. I will be putting that right behind us. You can see that wall of stuff that we have. So Keaton Kolazar, appreciate the warm-up puck. And then doing the warm-ups, we saw with Adin Hill, people were skating around. And Keaton Kolazar, speaking of which, I want to praise him real quick because the way that he was being the leader and he was passing the puck to people, he was dishing it, being a leader, and kind of interesting how Keaton Kolazar went from a young, bright-eyed, year one, kind of a prospect in the AHL, to now being kind of an established veteran type leader in the locker room for the Vegas Golden Knights. You have to really appreciate the development of what Keaton Kolazar has become. And he has really become a steady rock for the Golden Knights. And we saw later in this game how well Kolazar did. So I just want to take a second to appreciate that. Getting into the first period for your Vegas Golden Knights, and it would start out with a bang as Alex Pietrangelo would score his first goal of the season after having a nice setup pass from William Karlsson. Pietrangelo goes past the goalie and Daniel Vladar and would score his first goal of the season, assisted by Karlsson and Alexander Holtz. So that third line of Pearson, Karlsson, and Holtz have worked in the first 2 games that they have been together. And for Pietrangelo, he has been racking up a bunch of assists on the season. He already has 10 plus on the year. So for Pietrangelo to get his first goal of the season, congratulations to him. There was some good physicality between the 2 teams. There was a lot of back and forth and everything that was going on there. There was some hits from Rasmus Andersson out there in Calgary, one of the most underrated defensemen, a defenseman I actually like watching in the NHL. And then you also had some hits from guys like Nazem Kadri. You also had some banter, some back and forth between both teams. But overall, the physicality was actually kind of more on display in this game. And we saw with the Vegas Golden Knights, a team that kind of took the physicality, but they dished it out as well. So for the Vegas Golden Knights, I did appreciate what we saw in this game from them. Now, in the remainder of the first period, it would remain a 1-0 game for Vegas against Calgary at the end of the first period. One aspect that we do have to acknowledge is the fact that Jack Eichel, there was a shot in the first period that just went high. All right, he had the right angle. He got the dish over from Mark Stone. Seemed like it was going to be a goal. He had that dangle. He was in the right spot, the right area. And when he shot it, it just went up too high and it went over the net. But yeah, that could have been a 2-0 game for the Vegas Golden Knights if Eichel wouldn't have shot it up and they would have just laid it down. So after the first period, the Golden Knights up 1-0. And then in the second period, the first line for the Vegas Golden Knights, they would strike and they would get on the board for your Vegas Golden Knights as Mark Stone with the nice assist from Jack Eichel, and it would be his 5th goal of the season for Mark Stone. So currently the points leader in the NHL, Mark Stone, 5th goal of the season. Jack Eichel, 13 assists in 10 games so far. So yes, Jack Eichel keeping up his pace of a point per game. And overall, when it comes to Eichel and Stone, I mean, this momentum, and I'm going to put a disclaimer here, I highly doubt that they're going to keep up a 2-point per game pace. But what an incredible start for Stone, for Eichel, and for especially Barbashev. Like, these three guys have had an absolute outstanding start to the 24-25 season. And this goal really showed you how in touch and how well-tuned the first line is for your Vegas Golden Knights. So being up 2-0, and this second period would end. But here's a disclaimer, an interesting note from the second period. The Calgary Flames did not get a single shot off in the second period until 18 minutes and 36 seconds into the game. So they went almost an entire second period without firing a single shot to Adin Hill. And let's remember, this is a Calgary Flames team that only had 5 shots on net in the first period. So this team went that long without firing a single shot. And that really should either tell you that A, the defense was strong with the Vegas Golden Knights, or B, that the Calgary Flames offense wasn't on par and they were not attacking and being offensive enough and going towards the net. So the third period for the Vegas Golden Knights. And this third period for Vegas would actually be the dagger and the nail in the coffin for this game, as the Vegas Golden Knights wouldn't just get 1 goal, they wouldn't just get 2 goals, but they got 3 goals in the third period. And it started out with Keegan Kolesar. Now, Kolesar in that fourth line with Waugh and Schwint. Keegan Kolesar, his 3rd goal of the season with about 2 minutes into the third period. It would put Vegas up 3-0 against the Calgary Flames. No, but we're not done. As Keegan Kolesar would get his 2nd goal of the game and his 4th goal of the season about halfway into the third period, assisted by Nicholas Waugh. So Nicholas Waugh with his 2nd assist of the game and Kolesar's 2nd goal of the game. But if you wanted to assume the 4th line is done, nah. As about half a minute after the Kolesar goal, Kolesar to Schwint over to Nicholas Waugh, and he nails it past Daniel Vladar and would be his third goal of the season for Nicholas Waugh. So that fourth line got all 3 goals in the third period. And I really want to appreciate that. Is that for a fourth line, I mean, everyone's been giving praise to the first line, Stone, Eichel, and Barbashev. The second line, they've really started to step up over the last week and a half. Carlson, Holt, Pearson, we're seeing the chemistry starting to form on that line. But line 4 has been kind of underrated this year. Kolizar, already at 4 goals on the year. Nicholas Waugh has a pair of goals already to his resume. And then with Schwint and Brisson, Schwint doing better than Brisson has at this point in time. But still, this fourth line doing a really stellar job with your Vegas Golden Knights. And he is not player of the game, but I do want to acknowledge Keegan Kolizar, not just for the warm-up stuff, but the fact that Keegan Kolizar, so far this season, he has had a shift. He has really had a turnaround in terms of his performance as a Vegas Golden Knight. I mean, this is someone like Keegan Kolizar, and I did not realize this until we looked it up. 10 games into the season, he has 4 goals, 3 assists. He has a +4 on the year. And more importantly, for a guy like Keegan Kolizar, only 2 penalty minutes this season. So for someone who's known for being a fighter, for being a protector, someone who, defends his teammates, only 2 penalty minutes and 7 points in 10 games this year. So for a fourth line player like Keegan Kolizar, he has stepped up in a good way. And at the end, the buzzer would sound, the horn would go off at T-Mobile Arena, Viva Las Vegas, going through the speakers, and a shutout for Adin Hill. So after his underwhelming performances the last couple of games, this is the type of performance you needed from Adin Hill. To have a shutout, to not allow a single goal against Calgary, very important for building up his confidence, for making sure when it comes to that self-esteem of what you can do in the net. Adin Hill getting a shutout for Vegas. Want to give him some praise there. And the only 2 notes left we have for this game against Calgary was the penalty from Kevin Ball. Now, in the second period, Kevin Ball would get a penalty for a check to the head on Cole Schwint. And this was only given a 2-minute penalty, even though it should have been a 5-minute penalty. Kevin Ball hit him in the head, and Schwint slowly skated over to the bench. The fact that this was not more than just a 2-minute penalty is embarrassing. And the weird thing is that if it was a Vegas Golden Knights player that had an illegal check to the head, you think a Golden Knights player would get a 2-minute penalty? We have seen countless times that the Golden Knights, like Brett Howden did last year against Seattle, you get a 5-minute penalty, and sometimes you get a game misconduct too if you check somebody to the head. But no, when Kevin Ball does it to Cole Schwint's in pain. You can obviously see it skating to the bench. That didn't matter. According to the Vegas Golden Knights, and according to the NHL, they have differences in what a 2-minute penalty is. So, yeah, that was kind of unfortunate. We were going to have to wait and see if Cole Schwint plays the next game, because he did seem like he was in some form of discomfort after that hit. And then lastly, here on Vegas Hockey Hub, because the Calgary Flames were playing in Vegas for the first time this year, Daniil Myromanov, Braden Bahal, and Anthony Mantha were all honored by the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, there was no tribute video, but the PA announcer did acknowledge that Myromanov, Bahal, and Mantha were all previous members of the Vegas Golden Knights the year prior. So that was a nice touch there to honor all 3 of them. So this is Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. And until next time, go Knights go.